normal, 30-something-year-old men can find another 30-something-year-old man and say, do you play Dungeons and Dragons? Back in the back in the day, back in the school days, we knew who our Dungeons and Dragons nerds were, right? We didn't have that kind of guessing game.
Was it the haircut? I mean, what was it?
Pocket protector. I don't know.
Okay.
The fact that we were usually small and wore things like camouflage around for no reason.
that okay. I can see that.
That was very much my early days at Timberline. But the reality that we have here, guys, is that Dungeons & Dragons is a role-playing experience. No, we're not talking about whips, chains, that sort of stuff.
What stays in the bedroom, honey?
No, it's not like that type of goofy stuff. This is or it's not called live action role play either. We're not jumping around the park throwing tennis balls at each other, screaming fireball and stuff like that. No, this is something completely different. This is a tabletop role playing experiences using things like dice and miniatures and these sorts of things to allow people an escape from maybe the normalcy or sometimes excruciations of their normal life.
So you're not talking about two dudes in the back alley like a drug deal. You're talking about just everyday folk, middle-aged men, whatever, getting together and just having some community. I mean, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it is much like taking something like a video game like World of Warcraft, which is known as a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, and making it in person. So you have one person who presents a setting to everybody. You don't have a screen to look at or a monitor. You have a storyteller telling a story. It becomes like this choose your own adventure books. You remember those back in the day where it says, if you would do this, go to page 14. If you would do this, go to page 109. You remember those, man?
No, I don't. I can't say I do.
Okay. Well, those were very common for me in my childhood. I enjoyed having the authority to be able to select where the story was going to go. And that was what Dungeons & Dragons was like, but with a real-time storyteller who I could interact with, negotiate with, even sometimes interrogate certain characters to get levels of information and pieces of information that would essentially advance the story that the Dungeon Master was essentially telling us.
Okay. So are you saying all I use here is dice and my imagination?
Your imagination, and they have essentially this setup kind of scoring system is the best way to... It's hard to explain, but everything has percentages built into it. So if you want to throw a knife across the room and hit somebody in the head with it, you will have to make a check to see whether or not your character has enough of those types of skills to be able to achieve the suited ability.
Oh, okay. So, oh gosh, I'm so lost on this game. That's why I've only played it once. So, are you saying that we have a set of rules though for characters? I mean, so we can create our own backstory for the character, but there is a set of rules for that particular character.
Yes, usually these dungeon masters will have a story set up in
a dungeon master?
A dungeon master is essentially the one providing the particular story, the one setting the ambience, the settings, and playing the obstacles in which the characters are going to try to overcome.
Okay, so how much pool does this dungeon master have? I mean, say they don't like a character for some silly reason, or they don't like the person, playing that character. Can this dungeon master say screw the other people or the other person so they don't?
Sure. What? I don't know how many times you'd have many people come back playing if that's the type of dungeon master you're going to be.
Okay, good.
We
good
all
point.
want a merciful God. And while you're not really playing God, you are creating the reality and telling the story to the people that are there, which, for that particular moment, makes you the authority of a particular reality.
Okay, so say you're a character and you have a character. How many? What kinds of questions should we ask this character to really get to know him? I mean, is it really anything?
Well, those kinds of relationships with other player characters, or even other non-player characters that the dungeon master is pretending to be, those types of relationships take time. So, if you're, it's supposed to simulate reality. So if you're having to be a, say, beautiful elven, ranger with massive levels of charisma that attract all sorts of beautiful attention all over the world, and you're sitting next to a squatty, ugly dwarf, it might be an awkward conversation between the two entities, because they're different people. There's the squatty, ugly dwarf who goes from
good accent,
caves, and he does all these things for people. And you have
a wonderful, beautiful woman who can pretty much, I'm sure, get anything she wants.
So what type of conversations are those two people going to share?
Okay, so say, this is one that you're supposed to see these characters as real people. So the squatty dwarf could possibly have a crush on this beautiful woman?
That's a possibility.
So he would say, have you ever been in love, maybe?
It could be.
Okay.
It could be. You might have that elven maiden might end up having a 3'2", Donald Trump on her hands, trying to
oh gosh,
grab her by the whatsies. And those sorts of interactions become part of the Dungeons and Dragons experience. That people aren't always going to get along, but if they want to achieve certain goals and efforts together, just like that group on Star Trek, they are going to have to work as a team and overcome their differences.
Yeah.
And there are racial tensions sometimes between the two entities or differing cultures. Because those sorts of things only get in the way when it comes time for actual work to be done.
So are you saying that this game can open your mind, expand your mind, the way you think, the way you view the world, really?
Perhaps because you could take an opportunity to view a different world, one, but for two, you can also take the opportunity to flip it and be a different person. So if you're the 7-foot tall lumberjack who on the weekends gets with his friends and becomes a 3'1" halfling female, that's a very differing opinion, and that can show you different ways in which a person is able to view the world. Because to be able to role play, you have to empathize.
Yeah.
And being inside those characters and understanding how those characters would understand and react gives people a deeper understanding of not only racial tensions and harmonies that might live there, but their own self-actualization on the deeper grips and areas to teach social skills to kids or do other things. It provides a endless world of opportunities.
So what age were you when you started playing? I'm essentially interviewing you, so I know what to do for when we play this game again.
I think the first time I played Dungeons and Dragons, I was 13 years old.
Oh wow! Okay, so just at the hit of puberty.
No,
I'm guessing you had a lot of beautiful women.
I think I was a little late on that one, actually.
Okay.
So, no, I was a young man. I got into it right around, I think, 13, 14 years old. My brother and I used to play it. He started off actually as a dungeon master. I liked the opportunity to overcome the obstacles and coming up with creative ways to do it. And we played pretty well. This was actually one of the things that brought us together as brothers. We used to talk about, possibly living together and owning a castle together,
Holy moly.
and writing for TSR and creating all these different like adventures and stuff like that. Be writers for Dungeons and Dragons was kind of our dream at that point. And unfortunately, though, we grew up in a very fundamental Christian household, who I think they thought Dungeons and Dragons was originally just a phase. And as it got more, we got more and more interested in it and tried to escape the realities of some of our own childhoods and issues that were there at that time. You know, it created some parental tensions, and ended up when things happened there that it separated my brother and I, where we never actually played much after all that. It was kind of the last thing we actually really played much together. It's a game that brings people together, and I think that people have this opportunity to experience an imagination, a realm that offers them something a little different than maybe the reality which they don't particularly want to hear.
Okay, so all right, so you started when you were 13 or around 14. Now, does your character become more elaborate? So I'm saying, you know, instead of a character maybe called Deathy McScarypants, and you guys are in the basement and you're trying to, you know, kill the forces of evil from the upside down, does it become more elaborate as you as you age? This is what I imagine, okay? A couple of nerds playing this game, you know, just yelling out stuff at a young age, where there's imagination, but it's not, what am I trying to say? It's not grown up.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I think as our imaginations develop, so do our experiences. You take a look at somebody like J.R. Tolkien. I'm sure at 13 years old, he wasn't spending 2, 3, 4 pages writing the colors of a leaf. But that's exactly what J.R. Tolkien is well known for, is being able to provide that level of descriptive content that draws the reader in. And yeah, we might not have the vocabulary, experience, or even capacity to have a very deep world past, you know, a couple of goofy little things at a young age. But as we do get older, our stories do hold more realism, more detail, more subtleties, things that draw people in. They make them feel a little bit more like they're actually experiencing something and not just sitting around the table with a bunch of friends. So
I actually read an interesting quote from the Los Angeles Times, and this is from Jon Favreau. Do you know who that is, right?
Yes.
Hello, the Mandalorian series,
yes,
Avengers.
Yes.
Okay, so he plays D&D, okay? I know. And he says that D&D gave him a really strong background in imagination, storytelling, and it actually really helped him create these stories that he's known for. So I mean, you can see it. You can see the imagination. And he says it's all due to, not all due, of course, but it's partially due to D&D.
Certainly. Thinking about how things come together, it gives you an opportunity to not only understand maybe how life works, but put it in maybe a mathematical equation that other people who are needing that kind of extra support can see a world that makes more sense to them through those mathematical equations. For the people who live in ones and zeros and absolutes, imagination could be difficult. But not with something like this. Because now they're imagining just what type of percentage I need to throw a lasso across a tree while I'm running with my horse next to a river villa as I'm about to fall into a